All right, so the training sort of plot. Pretty obvious, but how do we incrementally progress?
Demonstrate and apply cool new abilities.
Okay, I guess, yeah, cool new abilities. I think it's just kind of, like you say, it's the cool new abilities, but I think it's more we show them at various stages of expertise. That says various stages of expertise. Where what you do is you show what they're going to need to do early on. Even show them failing horribly in trying to achieve that. That's very common in the training montage, or in the training plot structure. And that is the way we basically make our promise, right? If you have the character try something enormous and then fail in the early part of the book, that's basically a promise that they're going to figure out how to do it by the end. Not always, but that's how a lot of readers are going to read it. All right. I'm missing a big one here. I'm trying to remember what it is. Oh, this is more common in epic fantasy, but we do have the Travelogue. I guess there's two L's in that. Travelogue. What is the Travelogue?
Journey motif.
Journey motif. We are going someplace, and our incremental progress is showing us along the way, the stops along the way. This one works very well for stories that you want to be episodic. Where your idea is that, and I'll put the other kind of, probably what this really is Timebomb. They're basically the same thing. The Timebomb / Travelogue. What's a Timebomb?
It's just waiting to have something really bad happen.
Yeah, or good. But that's a time pinata. A time bomb is in Brewster's Millions. You have to spend this much money by this much time. Time bomb is any season of the show 24, which has a literal time bomb a lot of the time. You have this much time before something awful happens. But it's also, there's tons of plots. What was that Bachelor movie or whatever? You've got how many days to find a wife, otherwise you lose your fortune. Anytime where they're putting a time increment on it. I put a time bomb in Elantris. If you read that one, there was a character who had 90 days, 100 days to convert the kingdom, otherwise they were going to be slaughtered by their enemies.
Not a literal one, just kind of.
Yeah, time bomb is a phrase that means, it doesn't have to be a bomb, but it means you are putting a structure on it. So the idea is that, with the Travelogue is, we're going to this place, but it's the same thing with the time bomb. We're going to spend this much time.
Could I conceptualize this as sort of a critical deadline?
Yeah, a critical deadline. Deadline would work real well. So, what's that?
How does that relate to the Travelogue?
They're basically the same plot. The time bomb is you're expending time getting toward this thing, and the Travelogue is you're expending distance getting to this thing. They do have little tweaky differences to them, but they're basically the same concept.
So how do we make the promise in a Travelogue?
We say, Frodo, you need to take this to Mount Doom. Go.
Okay.
How do you do that in chapter 1, though?
How do you do that in chapter 1? It depends. Like, in an epic fantasy, you generally do have a little more time. But, the Belgariads, the David Eddings books were all travelogues. And the idea with that was that, it's like, we're going to chase this person down before they do something horrible with this thing they've stolen. So the Travelogue becomes kind of open-ended. But, in chapter 1, or, first few chapters, something gets stolen. We have this much time to figure out how to fix it, otherwise, everything's going to go crazy. Bane has put a nuclear bomb in the city, and it will go off on this date. That's a time bomb, very literally.
In your Mistborn series, you had your Lord Ruler plot that was actually a cover for a larger, deeper plot that
Yes.
I'm not going to spoil, and it kept going on in layers like that. If we're trying to do one book but still incorporates the cool idea, but you're still trying to do the layered plot approach, how do you make the promises in chapter 1?
Write the whole book,
They
go
back
plot
and
your
go back.
series, then go back and put them in.
Okay.
Learn to finish one book and make it awesome, then go ahead and worry about
No, I'm
layers.
saying you're taking
Yeah.
all three of the cool things and putting them into a single book.
Yeah.
But you still have multiple plots going on in the book, and one is
Yes.
a cover for the next.
Yep, and you'll notice I didn't put these all in chapter 1. I nested them. This is probably like chapter 10. This is chapter 1. This is like chapter 3 or 4. This is chapter like 5 or 6, and this is like chapter 10 or something. So if you're doing that, then you can nest them that way. Take that chapter 1 guideline fairly loosely. You often will have a few chapters. You guys won't. They're writing middle grade and YA. Thrillers, you won't. Thrillers, you've got to start it off. Do you guys know what a thriller is? You know that terminology? Airport books. Anything written, fiction that's in an airport that's not a romance is probably a thriller. What's that? Dan Brown is all thrillers. Michael Crichton is thrillers. John Grisham is thrillers. They're just action movies in book form is basically what we call a thriller. And of those, you really need to start off with a bang. You know, there's a body on the floor in chapter 1, and you know your heroes with blame for it. Go. And so, but yeah. So how do you nest these things? You're asking like a 401 question in a 101 class. Basically, well, I hope this is 201. I hope you guys have all done all the 101. But basically, do your best. I can't even say how I did that because it's going to be so individual to each project, making something like that work.
Okay.
And so really, you recommend that we do it in a vision then, that we kind of like make that happen if we want to?
Yeah, I honestly would recommend finishing the first book, plotting your series, and then going back and putting in the things you think you need. If you want to try it from the get-go, do it that way. I'm just giving advice based on experience for what has worked on occasion for me. I did write all of Mistborn 1 before I went through and really hammered out the plot for the second two, and it worked really well for me.
What books did you look to or think we should look to that are good examples of this? Besides yours.
Yeah. It depends on what type of plot you're wanting to do. Basically, most successful books are doing this because this is what's making you turn the pages. These things. These are what are making you turn the pages. An example of this from a book. And this is one I often share, so you might have heard this. I don't know if I've shared it in the class before, but there's a great book by Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle called Inferno. Have I talked about that one before? Inferno is this delightful book. Everyone knows them for their most famous book, which is the one about the three-handed aliens, Moat in God's Eye. But they wrote this awesome book called Inferno, which is about a science fiction author who falls out of a window because he gets drunk, dies, and goes to Dante's Inferno. Hell as described by Dante's Inferno. And then he basically has a series of adventures in hell trying to escape. And I found the book just utterly readable. I was turning the pages and enjoying it, but I thought, I don't usually like things this episodic, right? Because it was like, we're going to do this episode here, then we escape from it, and we're basically in the same place as we were before, except, we've gotten a little closer to our goal. This is how all television is basically plotted. And then I looked and realized it was because part of what my huge enjoyment of that was that they put a map in the center. Or in the beginning, that showed where the guy began and all the different, different parts of Dante's Inferno, with the center being something cool that we don't know what's there yet. And so our mystery was, what's at the beginning, what's at the middle? Our progress method was the travelogue. We're getting closer to it. It's got to be cool when we get there. And I just read the whole way, just zipped through that book, loved it. And it was in part because of this map working as a natural sense of progression for me toward the center. This is why I think maps are so popular in a lot of travelogue fantasy novels. I like maps for a different reason, but particularly if you're going to write a travelogue, having a map is a fantastic way to give a sense of progression. I know we're going here, and look, we're halfway there. We're moving. We're going. And that natural instinct inside of people that wants to see something completed gets fueled by this. If any of you have ever had trouble not finishing a book even though you're not enjoying it, it's because we have this thing that makes us want to complete things. And you can kind of, fuel that. And this is what you're looking to do.
So if not for the purpose of having a context for travel and geography, what else is a map used for?
I like him for the sense of ephemera, that this is a real place in a real world, which is why my maps tend to be in-world, drawn by people. We'll have a little thing at the bottom to say this cartographer drew this on this date for this person, and things like that. It gives a sense of immersion.
So more world building.
Epic fantasy, as a genre, one of the draws of it is the sense of immersion. Other forms of fantasy, not necessarily. Those are for the action or things like that. One of the things we love about epic fantasy, why I read it, is because of that sense of immersion and realism to the world. And so I try to do things that add to that. Scott?
So like with the Travelogue, you can, like a technique you can use to increase the sense of progression is a map. Like, do you just write the plot and then progression happens naturally, or like do you have to spell it out for the reader? Like,
Well, we'll
some
talk about
meaning
this.
or
We'll talk
another?
about that. We haven't gotten quite there yet.
So what about plots that are more internally driven, like a coming of age type story?
Yeah, coming of age story.
Down like this?
Yeah. There are so many ways you could take pieces of this. I would say a coming of age story. Certainly, we could put it under its own heading. Coming of age. It's kind of a subset maybe of training, but yeah, coming of age. Sure. You identify this is the type of plot I want to tell. Have you make a promise about that at the beginning, and what is your incremental progress? And you've done it, what we've done up here. And you could probably come up with your own definitions for a lot of these different things. And what you've got to decide is, what is your little thing under here? And how do you make that, your character conducive to this? For instance, coming of age plot, you probably then need to have a young person be your protagonist. Information plot, you want to have somebody who's inquisitive. That sort of thing, is going to be important toward telling your story. I'm not here to tell you all of these, basically because, you could say that all of them are either this, or you could spend hours and we could define a different one for every book that you've read. But the idea is to get in your head this idea of promises and fulfilling them. By the way, do you want a peach ring? All right, peach ring. Whoosh. Those are easy to throw. I like those. They're almost like little frisbees. So there we are. All right. Now we're going to talk about methods of creating an outline.